I first started to question the nature of business when it came for me to close down my own. I'd spent 7 years building up an international business selling these fold flat cups as well as bowls and plates to the outdoors industry. Our producers, our suppliers, our distributors, retailers, and ourselves all thought we were on the incline to riches. However, our sales had reached their peak, and they dropped off dramatically. I had to close my business down. In the period that followed, I reflected on control and the prison that it had created for me. I wanted to explore collaboration without control, so I moved to Berlin and I immersed myself in its maker scene. I helped to co-found makerspaces. I became involved in facilitating self-organized maker events. Amongst my friends, I count cyborgs, Internet of Things entrepreneurs, makers of 3D printers, collaborative consumers, and other explorers of the edges, the people that are prototyping the future here in Berlin. So I've occupied both worlds, and therefore I hope that I can translate a little between them. The key thing required for understanding traditional models of business is the systemic models that were around when they were born. You had the God model, which is a strong hierarchy with a total authority that's infallible. You have the model of war, where early businesses would actually attack nation states in order to do more business. And you had the model of the factory, which sees the system as a machine. These models are still present today in the language of business. You aim for targets. You seek to win market share. You have sales pipelines and human resources. You have supply chains. There's a new world that's now forming. New models of business have started to evolve online. These models are based on openness, transparency, sharing, and collaboration. These new models explored online are now coming offline, and we are seeing what the internet did with knowledge, allowing it to be distributed in the hands of everybody, is now also happening through the maker movement with things like prototyping and production. These tools are now accessible to all. Consider this. An 18-year-old boy in his garage is now capable of developing a virtual reality headset which can compete and is better than anything already within the marketplace. Not only that, but he can crowdfund the money required to the tune of $2.4 million so he can bring this product into the marketplace. Oculus has subsequently sold to Facebook for $2 billion. This is just one example of what this infrastructure can do. Within the scene, we have things like people building cars together that can do more than 100 miles to the gallon. And we have groups working to put their own rockets into space as citizens. The best way to understand these new models is the metaphor of evolution and the metaphor of the ecosystem. But when I talk about evolution, and when you understand Darwin and his term survival of the fittest, it's important to recognize that he meant survival of the best adapted. He wasn't talking about the survival of the fastest, the strongest, the most aggressive. Instead, he was talking about the best adapted to the ecosystem. So think like a mushroom and not like a dinosaur. A good example of this mushroom thinking is collaborative spaces. You have hacker spaces, maker spaces, and co-working spaces, even fab labs to some degree. Think of these things as mushrooms, and the idea of such a space and the means to reproduce it as the spore. When it finds fertile territory, a network begins to gather around it beneath this fertile soil, and only when that network is strong enough and able to gather the nutrients does a new space occur and emerge. Surrounding this, you have businesses and startups and projects, each sharing their nutrients through this space and through this network. A common mistake that businesses make is they see the mushroom above the surface and they think that a co-working space is tables, chairs, and internet access and access to coffee. It is more than this. It is the network that lies underneath it and the connections that we see. An example of a business which is engaging with the ecosystem in a very effective way is Tesla Motors. When Elon Musk made his patents publicly available for free use, what he's doing is he's making the nutrients of his intellectual property available to a wider network. In doing so, he's helping for the electric vehicle market to grow, and he's helping to nourish it. He will stand to profit from the supply of batteries, solar panels, and also the charging stations that he's building throughout the US. As the market grows, so will his business, and everybody will benefit. But hackers won't necessarily ask you before they take what they want from you. It's better, as Peter Kern illustrated earlier with the Connect. Something you should consider is that hackers are like bees. They won't ask the flower before they take the pollen. From a position of command and control, it's very easy to see hackers as a threat, but instead I would invite you to see them as a symbiote that's allowing for the cross-pollination of ideas and the identification of new market opportunities for your business. It's important also that we look at the core nutrients within the system and within the ecosystem. Money at the moment isn't necessarily something which is entirely nutritious. We should explore how we connect it to our future ecosystem that sustains us on the planet. How do we connect it not to gold or even abstract concepts like shareholder value? How do we instead connect it to things like better soil, better water quality, better air quality, and better quality of life for us all? Bitcoin is now enabling this kind of change and transition to happen. Through the blockchain is a distributed database that exists to enable the Bitcoin. It's totally transparent yet somehow secure, and it allows for distributed apps to be built. Ethereum is one such company which is currently building a platform that will allow for distributed applications. And Swarm is now building a platform that will allow for crowd equity. This will allow investors from the crowd to earn shares in a distributed entity, shares with voting rights. This allows for entirely new models of business, which are in themselves decentralized. Loose collectives can gather around mutual interests, and they can derive shares in return for value contribution, whether that contribution is monetary or whether that contribution is some form of work and labor. Now, where does this leave the dinosaurs? Some organizations are presently listed as too big to fail, because in doing so, they could potentially destroy the ecosystem. I would likewise argue that they're too big to live, because in continuing, they actually suck up too many nutrients and resources from the surrounding ecosystem, sucking up all of the opportunity and preventing diverse growth from cropping up. Within any ecosystem, the key essential factor is death. Bear with me. Death returns the nutrients to the soil. It's essential. Death allows for renewal. It allows for rebirth and recreation. So it's very important that we explore how we create death by design. For years, we've had planned obsolescence for products, but I would like to see us move towards planned obsolescence for businesses. Crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter now create an opportunity for businesses to generate demand ahead of supply. This allows us to create things like Mayfly businesses, which can actually develop products like everlasting light bulbs, which have been technically feasible, and then die. This will be a very challenging thing for entrenched business interests to compete with, because how do you compete with an entity which has completely disrupted your market and then died. It's no longer even around. For businesses that are looking to survive and look at how they can continue to survive, I would encourage you to look at your legacy. When the dot-com bubble crashed, it left us with an internet transatlantic backbone from which we all now benefit from today. So look at how you can nurture the ecosystem first and foremost. Look at how you can put the best of what you have into your offspring in order that they can survive. Then open up, die, and let the ecosystem thrive. Thank you.